Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tom LaHue, and we're going to be talking about Enneagram Type 1s. And we're going to be looking at this book by Elizabeth Orr called The Unfiltered Enneagram. This book is new to me, and I highly recommend it. I think it's really well done. It is kind of like a punch in the face. So if you like that kind of thing, then I think you're going to like this book. Elizabeth is a self-admitted Enneagram Type 8, the challenger. So the way she comes across in the book is very challenging. And I like that. I really like that. Like, I look at the Enneagram as a tool for growth, certainly to know more about ourselves, but also to like point out those areas in our life that might need a little bit of challenge, where we've gotten stuck or where we maybe have some blind spots. And so this book really does that well. And I want to look at her chapter on Enneagram Type 1, the perfectionist, the reformer today, and just point out some highlights that I think are pretty interesting and well said, and maybe give you something to think about and something that might challenge your thinking a little bit. So before we jump into this, just a reminder, in the description below is a link to my website, tomlahue.com. I do offer Enneagram coaching, where you basically book appointments with me. You can meet one time, or we can meet over a series of weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever works for you. And the Enneagram is a great tool to know more about ourselves and help us when we get stuck or when we need somebody to talk to that understands us a little bit, and then also our relationships. So I do a lot of appointments with people all over the world. I'd love to meet with you. Maybe you just want to talk the Enneagram with somebody that likes it and you don't have anybody in your life that wants to have these discussions with you. I'd love to talk with you and meet with you. And also, there's a lot of courses on my website on demand, as well as live courses. I have one coming up right now at the making of this video on the Enneagram and relationship coaching. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, please check out my website. All right, let's jump into this information. Let me hit some highlights. I will have to use my glasses. Sometimes, it gets a little hard to read, and so I have to use my glasses. But I just want to hit some highlights, just some things that I thought stood out. She calls you guys the goody two-shoes on the Enneagram. And don't get upset. I mean, hear it for what she's saying is you guys do have this desire to be good, to be right, to do the right thing. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, at your best, you bring that into the team, you bring that into the room, and challenge the rest of us to be a little more mindful of having integrity, of, living to that standard. And we appreciate that. But she says ones, unlike type 8s who can be combative and type 9s who can be passive, you're in that anger group with 9s and 8s. Ones, try to gain control. And you might say, wait a minute right there. I'm not trying to control anything. Well, probably most ones would see themselves as being a little bit like control freaks or managers or micromanagers. So if you know that about yourself, yes, Tom, I am a control freak. Yes, I do like to stay in control of things. I do want to manage things. Then you're just maybe being honest with yourself. But maybe you're unlike some of the other ones. You're more easy, go along with the flow, and don't really want to control everything. But realize, like, in that group up there, the anger group, 8, 9s, and 1s, there is this sense that like the world is broken and things aren't working right, and I want to get in control of this. And 8s, they go with that anger, 9s go against it, and 1s try to like overcome whatever is causing the anger and get things back into a sense of control. So she says 1s try to control things through correcting what's unbalanced or improper or not right, correction through moral superiority, smugly taking their place at the lead because of their strict adherence to the rules and their expectations of propriety. So that doesn't sound very good, does it? I mean, again, she's going to point out some of the challenges, or we're going to point out some of the challenges. And that moral superiority, that smugness, that sense that you're on kind of like the moral high ground, you may not realize how much it sounds like you're talking down to others. But other people are going to react to that and other people are going to respond to that in probably not some pleasant ways. All right, let me just hit a couple more highlights here. She says ones can be rigid, unforgiving, and highly critical. You probably already know this about yourself. They can be a real pain in the butt, only she says something else. But, all of us can be, for sure. But in your own way, in trying to get things right, you can sometimes get things wrong in relationships or in the manner in which you communicate your wants and needs and concerns. It can come across as highly judgmental and critical, and you know all this already, right? So let's keep going. Ones get the tiniest taste of their own medicine. If you get the tiniest taste of your own medicine, the nitpicking, the criticism, it's going to set your blood to boil. So there's sort of like this idea, and it's probably true of all the types, but I can see it in this particular way, is never do to ones what they do to you. That highly critical, that, correcting, that monitoring, that looking over the shoulders and analyzing and then giving your comments about how it could be done better or how it should have been done sooner. Those things that you might tend to do in relationships as a one, it's probably not wise to do that to you. So if you live with a one, you work with a one, you're married to a one, just because you might perceive them as being very critical, you need to be careful that you don't get critical with a one, because you're kind of waking up this inner critic that is very harsh inside their own head, and you don't want to do that, because the ones tends to get very defensive, very reactive, and resentful because of that. So trying to control the circumstances around you. You have an internal pressure cooker. So, if nines are like a crock pot, slowly simmering, and then finally, once a month or once every 3 months, they kind of let it out and get angry visibly with people. I guess eights would be like a gas grill, or like a charcoal grill where you put the lighter fluid on it and right. But ones, I think that concept of pressure cooker is probably pretty right. Like, you're trying to push this down because it's not good to show that anger or to blast people with your frustration. So you're pushing it down, and that is creating this pressure to, on the outside, sort of like smile through your gritted teeth. As you're hearing what's going on in this meeting, you're kind of like smiling along and with this gritted teeth, like holding it all in, holding it all back. I don't know. If you think I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Put it in the comments. Say, that's not the way it is at all, Tom. We're not like that. Okay, whatever. All right. So your essential state. Now, this is pretty cool. In this book, she goes through like your essential state and, your false self and that kind of stuff. Your essential state is to be grounded, to have a serene state of acceptance of everything as though it's already perfect. And I'd say that's probably just like stating it a little too strongly, because things in life are not perfect. Now, we could say they're perfectly imperfect, like everything is fine, even though it is really all broken. And of course, you'll see my Christian worldview is that we're not in the Garden of Eden any longer. So outside the Garden of Eden, everything is broken. People get sick, people do the wrong thing. So we need jails, we need laws, we need rules, we need time clocks, we need policies and manuals and law, And so I don't think things are perfect. I think maybe an overstatement is at your best self, there's an acceptance. Let's say it that way. At your essential self, there's this serenity and this acceptance that even though things do not measure up to the perfect standard, they're perfectly imperfect, or they're okay, and I need to learn to accept that things are okay as they are. And that might feel really difficult for you. Because you think I'm not being honest with myself. I'm not being honest and real and genuine. Things are not okay. Things are not perfect. It's not okay when people break laws and oppress each other or abuse each other or violate, each other like that. How can you accept that? And I don't think any of us are arguing that we should accept that. I'm just saying it has to be an acceptance that this is the way things are now. One day things might be perfect. If you're from a Christian worldview and you're looking toward heaven, like in heaven, yeah, everything will be perfect. But until then, in this world, things are not going to be perfect. And my wanting them to be perfect is just going to create a gap between the way things are and the way things should be. And that gap between the two is probably that pressure cooker of anger. It's what causes that anger. Because realize this, you're very idealistic, right? It should be like this. And I can't argue with you. It should be like that, but it's not. It's not like that. Marriages, relationships are not like that. And work and job and career and standards, it's not like that. It's more like this. And there has to be this like acceptance that this is the way it is in the world. Now, I want to show up in the world and try to make things better, but I sure don't have to be perfect. And I sure can't expect things to be perfect. Being perfect is too extreme. Improving, I think that's very healthy. Like, focus on that. How can we make things better? How can we improve this system? How can we enhance? How can we work together? How can we collaborate? How can we challenge? How can we improve things and improve our environment, improve our workplaces, improve our marriage? Everybody's for that. I think everybody would be, more accepting of that kind of thinking. But there has to be first like this acceptance that things are never going to be as they should be, at least in this life. Okay? All right. Whoa, don't poke your eye out. You'll poke your eye out, kid. Okay. In an agitated space, ones can provide... Oh, wait. In an integrated, not agitated. I told you I can't read. In an integrated space, ones can provide the world with structure, which is a good thing. We need structure in our world without being too rigid and without being too restrictive. So again, when you're doing well at your best, you kind of bring into the team, you bring into the room this understanding that we have to have integrity, that we have to have structure, that we have to have order, and that creativity can thrive inside that order. And that's a good thing to share with the rest of us, to remind us, that whatever we do, we need to do the right thing. Whatever we do, we need to look to a standard beyond ourselves, and not just, do sloppy work or be sloppy in the way we show up with things. Okay, she says ones can be inflexible, uptight, exhausting. Because when you have that standard of perfection, that's exhausting because nobody can live up to that. I mean, your kids can't live up to that. Does that, how does that impact your relationship with your kids, that desire for perfection in yourself and others? I mean, people are always going to feel like they're disappointing you. That's a terrible thing to feel. Do you like to disappoint others? No, you hate it, right? You hate that feeling that you're letting somebody down, or you're disappointing your dad, you're disappointing your boss. And yet, this is one of the ways that I often feel when I'm interacting with ones, is like, I'm just letting you down. I'm a big disappointment. And so one of the ways I might protect myself from that awful feeling is just not to interact with you, or to interact in a very superficial way, in a withdrawn, camouflage, self-protective way. Yeah, Dad, everything's great. No, Dad, we didn't do anything last night. And just not really open up and share. I can't open up and share with somebody who's going to be disappointed, frustrated, and always trying to teach me the moral truth or correct my ways. I'm just not going to open up and share with that. It's kind of like if you smack the dog on the nose every time the dog comes to you, the dog's going to quit coming to you. And I know you may not realize like you're even doing that, but that constant correcting, that constant analyzing or challenging what people are saying is going to feel like you're a dog getting smacked in the nose. So people will just stop coming to you. And that's probably going to further create for you this identity that you're in some kind of moral superior place where you're misunderstood, you're not a part of the group. Look at that line to four, right? Like you're an outcast, you're the outlier, you're the only one who's willing to hold the standard while everybody else is just wanting to play and goof off and not take their work seriously. That'll maybe the message that you end up telling yourself, which just further moves you away from health and balance and serenity. Such good stuff, all right? So she says your drug of choice is the smug satisfaction for just long enough, that that you're doing better than they are. At least you're not, this lazy person out there that's just cutting corners and being shifty and all this. It gives you relief as you criticize somebody else or even some other system or just, the quality of something. It might give you a sense of relief from your constant criticism of yourself. And it's kind of like she calls it your drug of choice. You may not even realize you're doing that. And maybe you think, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Okay, again, put it in the comments. Let's talk about it. Criticizing others and other experiences and other quality, so that you can take a break from criticizing yourself. If I was criticizing myself all the time, I'd want to take a break from that. I might start criticizing other things to get the focus off of myself because it wouldn't feel good to constantly be criticizing myself. I wouldn't like that. All right, so she says, the one has a core belief, and the core belief of the one is that this world is a rotten place. This world is an unethical place. It's a corrupted place. It's a foul place. And she even says, that's really hard to argue with. And it is. I mean, it's biblical, is that you don't live in the Garden of Eden any longer and everything's kind of ruined. And even though it might have the thumbprint of God, even like relationships, like marriage, for example, has the thumbprint of God, or creation has the thumbprint of God, it's still, all of it has been kind of ruined and is broken. And you don't have to be a Christian to see that the world is broken, that kids are getting sick, they die of cancer, that marriages end in divorce, that, people go bankrupt, that people have, your teeth fall out, your hair falls out. I mean, it doesn't take any kind of religious convictions at all to recognize that something, in fact, that may be why many people never even open their heart to any kind of religious truth, is because they say, how could there be a God when everything is as bad and corrupt and foul as it is? And just realize, what she's saying. And I'm not going to try to answer that question in this video. I'm just saying, she says that's the core belief of a type 1, is that you look out there and like ruined, 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 ruined. And your eyes go straight to those things that validate and verify that worldview that everything is kind of spoiled. Okay. So she says, whatever it was in the past, something went wrong. And she doesn't come at this from a Christian worldview at all. She's just saying that. So you got this mess and unfairness and imperfection, and it's all ones can see, regardless of what they look at or regardless of what's in front of them. And I just want to say that's very dark. You talk about 4s being dark, or 4-wing 5s, or 5-wing 4s as being dark. It's pretty dark that when you look out the window, all you see is what's corrupt, what's wrong. The kids are climbing the apple tree. The neighbor's got his garage door up. He didn't put his garage door down. The other neighbor left their trash can out. You say, Tom, you make us sound like we're some kind of villain. No, actually, you guys are the hero. Think about it. You're type 1. You're Captain America, probably Superman. You guys are the hero. We're talking about the disintegrated you. Not you at your best. We're talking about you when you're not doing so well. Is your eye looks out and just sees this dark, broken, sloppy, messy, visceral, vulgar, crappy world out there. And your eyes go right to it. And notice like your integration to 7, like 7s, we look out the window and look, hey, look at that bright thing. Hey, look at that shiny thing. Hey, look at that backpack trip we could go on. Hey, let's go van camping. Hey, let's go ride 4-wheelers. We tend to see like the bright, shiny, beautiful, attractive. Let's go get that. I need that other thing. Part of that integration to 7 might be you starting to see the glittery, shiny, sparkly, positive things in the world again. When you see your kids, do you see anything beautiful and sweet and loving? Or do you just see things that need to be corrected? Do you just see bad behaviors and flaws that need to be improved? When you look at your marriage, when you look at your spouse, do you see somebody that deserves your love, focus, and attention? Or do you just see someone that needs some, shaping up, some correcting, some improving in some way? It's your nature to want to improve things. But that desire to improve gets old. It gets old for yourself, and it gets old for all the people around you sometimes. It's a wonderful thing to want to improve your world, but notice the sort of the dark, assumption under that is that this world really needs to be improved. Everything is kind of rotten and foul, and nothing lives up to the perfect standard. Nothing does live up to the perfect standard, and you don't either. Right? We need help, don't we? We need some kind of divine intervention to help us, you might say. This is why I think the Enneagram is so useful in having spiritual conversations, because it just reveals the same things to us that we read about in theology, but just in different language, that the world is broken. Essentially, you've got the anger types, the world is broken. You got the worth and value types, 2, 3, and 4 is like, where does our value come from? How do we know we matter? And you got the fear types, 5, 6, and 7, all dealing with this question of how do we get safe in this world? How do we survive? And these are our three big questions, you might say, the Enneagram raises for us is, why is everything broken? Where does our value come from? And how do we protect ourselves? And there's three different strategies for each of these three problems. Okay. So where are we? The reformer, anything that is wrong or needs correcting in their immediate environment, anything. Okay, this is what you focus your attention on. Yeah, the focus of your attention is that it goes to anything that is wrong or anything that needs correcting in your immediate environment, and anything that you can attempt to control to bring back to some semblance of order. Now, I mean, that's fantastic when you're an auto mechanic or an electrician, right? Or you do carpentry or woodworking. And I know some ones that are those people exactly. And they do beautiful work, meticulous, detailed. We had a guy who was a type 1 come in and after a hurricane and redo all of our kitchen. And he literally built cabinets. He just went to Lowe's, bought all the wood, and then just measured once and cut everything and literally built the cabinets. Not like installed cabinets. No, I mean, took wood and turned it into cabinets. Meticulous attention to improving, to details, to making things right and correct. When he's working, you don't have to look over his shoulder because he's already looking over his own shoulder. And that's a wonderful thing, right? It's just could be difficult sometimes, maybe for the people that are working with you, right? To constantly see you disappointed or frustrated with the way things are, how they're not going perfectly, because they're not going to go perfectly. The core fear of the type 1 is, despite their best efforts and despite your best intentions, to make the world around you more fair, just, and equitable, the inner contamination that exists within you, that in some way you yourself are flawed, like in some way you yourself are broken and you don't measure up. And that's kind of like that line to 4, because that's definitely the way I think 4s sort of see themselves at times. Your inner contamination will always outweigh the good you try to do in the world. So you hear what she's saying? She's saying the core fear of a 1 is that as you go out into the world and catch everything that's wrong and try to fix it and make it right, your core fear is that your own inner grossness or offness or fallenness or brokenness will be exposed, and you'll not only make the world not better, but you'll actually contaminate the world by your presence, by your work, and by your devotion. Like you yourself will become a part of the contamination. Yeah. So we need to be compassionate, don't we, with ourselves, compassionate with each other. Because we're all going to not get it right sometimes, and we are going to at times make things worse. In your effort to make things better, you sometimes make it worse. That might be a good thought for you to just sit and think about, How at times in my effort to make things better, might I have been responsible for making things worse? That might show you some blind spots in the way you relate to others or the way you work on committees. In your desire to clean the kitchen up at church or clean the kitchen up at work, you're yelling at people, frustrated and being angry and yelling at people, the very people that you love and are trying to take care of. You're becoming harsh and angry and frustrated, and people are moving away from you because of that. in your desire to make things better, you may at times end up realizing that you are making them worse. It's such a paradox, isn't it? And the Enneagram is filled with these paradoxes of human behavior because, in a sense, we kind of ourselves can be paradoxes. So she says right here, you tend to be judge, jury, and executioner. Yeah, I would say like the archetype of a 1, could very well be judge, jury, and executioner, prosecuting attorney, district attorney, the attorney general. And that realize that's a wonderful position, and it is a needed position in our culture. It's just not necessarily needed at home when your daughter comes home from a date, or when your son, messes up his basketball game and he asks you, Dad, for support and guidance. It's just it could be the wrong time to be judge, jury, and executioner. What's interesting is you think about the wings of a 1, right? That 9 wing, very important, serenity, acceptance, and then that 2 wing, love and support, encouragement. It just kind of shows you, doesn't it, what a 1 needs to be balanced. Acceptance of others and their opinions, acceptance of the world as it is, serenity, and also not just correcting, but also like engaging with and devotion and love and affection. I mean, that's right there, the other wing, the 2 wing. Who's more affectionate than a healthy type 2, And that those are the wings there right next to you. So we want to learn to lean into those a little bit. Your idealized self-image is of a perfectionist. And it's interesting, she says, that's like the cheap copy of who you actually are. Like your true self is someone who accepts that the world is broken and seeks to make it better. But the false self, or the idealized self-image, is I am a perfectionist. I don't get things wrong. I'm always improving. I take the high road. And it's like this cheap carbon copy that people can see through and doesn't seem really very authentic. And it's hard to relate to. It's hard to be around. She calls it a cheap off-brand. Perfectionism is rigid and unforgiving. You say, but yeah, Tom, they screwed up. Okay, they did. And you have as well. And it's not that we don't acknowledge that or process that. It's just we need immediately to also have grace. We confront, but we also have forgiveness. Look at type 2, love. Love keeps no records of wrongs. Do you keep a record of wrong? It's hard for me to have a relationship with you if you haven't forgiven me. It's impossible, actually, for me to, I will not seek out a relationship with you if you're continuing to hold grudges against me because I was wrong, because I didn't act right, or I said something wrong. We have to learn to forgive. We have to learn to accept. We have to learn to move on. You can't move on without forgiveness. It's essential in order to move on. Okay. Perfectionism, though, is too rigid. It doesn't allow for forgiveness. It's unforgiving. Literally, that's the word, unforgiving. It is constructed to conceal your own flaws and the standard issue humanity, or of everybody else, which they fear reveal a core corruption within them. Right. So let's see. At your best, you're responsible, reliable, polite, all those things. You're trusted with important tasks, important jobs, important information. And if I'm not 100% good, you might relish in that fact, well, at least I'm doing better than some other people. And, whenever we compare ourselves with others, we run a real risk of either becoming like, despair, like, why am I not measuring up to what they're able to do? Why, or you have the other risk of having pride, like, well, at least I'm doing better than they are. And neither one of those is attractive. Despair, I can't measure up to everybody else. It's not fair for me. Or I'm doing far better than them. Neither one of those is really a healthy beginning point. But, in an unhealthy state, you might examine your own goodness based on the badness of everybody else. So you actually need to see people's flaws so you can feel better about yourself. I mean, if I need to feel good about myself, it's easy for me to compare myself with somebody else and say, well, how do I compare with them? Oh, I'm doing better than them, so I'm doing okay. But that's still not perfect. That's still not perfect. You're never going to be perfect. And I guess the rest of us are okay with that. Like the rest of us tend to accept that a little easier. Like we're never going to be perfect. It might be really helpful for you to like say out loud, I'm a big screw up. Like I'm the biggest screw up there is. You might say, I don't like saying that. That doesn't feel good to me. No, but what it does, it kind of challenges that dragon that's chasing you. And instead of pushing yourself and pressure cooking yourself in order to become perfect, you're basically just admitting the truth out loud and like driving that demon away. You're like calling that demon by name and you're pushing it back saying, I'm a big screw up. There's a peace and harmony that would come over you by accepting that rather than trying to prove that it's not true. What if you just accepted it? You're like, well, yeah, but then what would I do? Well, then welcome to humanity, right? Welcome to humanity. It's a big paradox is that ones can contain an inflated sense of superiority and this haunting suspicion within them that they are completely depraved on the inside. So they come across, you might come across as though you're better than others, while inwardly, what are you thinking about yourself? I'm a big screw up. Maybe just say that out loud. Lead with your failures. Lead with your mistakes. Defense mechanism is called reaction formation. Now, I've heard it called justification or rationalization, but what she says here is interesting, that the defense mechanism of one's is when you demonstrate a more socially accepted response or emotion rather than what's going on the inside. She calls it reaction formation. You're forming a reaction, one that's sort of more pleasant and more light and more easygoing, but inwardly you might be full of resentment and seething. And one of the reasons that you might be full of resentment is you're stuck doing all the work. You don't, okay. You may have a hard time accepting other people's help in the way they want to give it. And so you end up isolating yourself and you have this very high standard to do things right and to stay with something until it's right. And so you end up being the last person doing all of this, and you've pushed away nice people who wanted to help you, but they didn't want to do it the way you wanted them to do it, and you wanted to control things. And now you are doing this by yourself. You're carrying this heavy load by yourself, which makes you feel good about yourself, but also you're filled with resentment because other people get to go play. Other people get to be lighthearted. Other people get to, engage in shenanigans. And I'm the designated driver. I'm the one stuck with the keys. I'm the one stuck holding the barrel. I'm the one stuck, but you kind of put yourself in this position, and then you're, obviously angry and upset and resentful that this is where you find yourself. Okay. What else? Constantly plagued by an emotion that they feel they're justified experiencing. Yeah, okay. I don't know. That didn't make any sense, but we need to get to the end of this today. Resentment is a common experience for ones. Let me just read this. Who are famous for assigning themselves the role of project manager, nitpicking and critiquing anyone attempting to assist, and then getting angry that they're the one left to carry the task over the finish line on their own. That's interesting, isn't it? You give yourself no wiggle room. You give yourself no wiggle room, and anger just begets more anger. And you're bound by your obligations, and you have this awful weight that you carry around, the weight of the world on your shoulders. And we sense that. We sense that, and we're careful around you. So the answer she gets to is serenity, is a healthy acceptance of the way things are, to accept that everything, now she says, is already perfect, but I wouldn't say that. I don't think everything's already perfect. I think it's like an acceptance that things are not going to be perfect. One day maybe, but not in our lifetime. Things are not going to be perfect. My work, my, nothing, my marriage, nothing's going to be perfect. It's an acceptance of that, and that my corrections and my focus and my, is helpful, but not necessary. Not necessary. things may one day be perfect, but I'm probably not going to be the one that makes them that way. I want to make things better. And again, I think that's very healthy to make things better, to be improving things. But improving things is very different than you feel the responsibility to never mess up, to never have a negative interaction, to never, make a mistake or be found out, to be exposed, to never have any darkness within you. So one of the things she says as an 8 is she challenges you to go break some rules. That's kind of funny, I mean, like she says, keep it light. Don't actually break the law, but just like don't put the shopping cart away. See what happens. Like get your shopping cart, get your groceries, put them in the car, and just leave your shopping cart there and don't roll it into the corral. Or whatever it is, whatever the infraction is, like intentionally try to break some rule. Nothing that's going to be, hurt another person or get you into jail or anything like that. But then also like lighten up and let yourself have some fun. Let yourself relax, let yourself enjoy an experience without overthinking it, without overcorrecting yourself. Forgive yourself. And be more lighthearted and fun. And I would say, it's really like leaning into 9, acceptance, leaning into 2, love and affection, looking more like a 7, playful, fun, loving, lighthearted. And then maybe even asking some of those 4 questions, like what really feels meaningful and important to me? If I wasn't stuck doing all these things to hold the world up, what would I do that just would feel meaningful to me? Like, what would I be assertive about? If I wasn't complying with all of the demands around me, what would I be assertive about? What would I create? And let's go create that together. I hope that you found this encouraging and inspiring. Again, this is from the Unfiltered Enneagram by Elizabeth Ord. Really great book. I'll see you guys next time. And as always, be present to life.